Welcome to GameFellas, the retro to modern gaming podcast, episode 4. With me tonight, we have Sorren Day.
Hello.
Derik Moore.
Guys.
And Justin Day.
Hey, guys.
And today, we are going to cover two topics. Might as well just tell you what they are now, but we'll get into them later. But the first topic is going to be best game franchises that are currently dormant, which should be interesting. And the second topic will be the best game you've never played. So we're not going to call it Hidden Gem. We're just going to call it the best game you've never played because I think that sounds better. I know Justin thinks that sounds better. So he's the one that thought of it.
Yeah, Hidden Gem kind of gets a little controversial when you use it nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So we won't go there. So anyway, let's start with what we've been playing, fellas. So Sorren, why don't you start us off? What you been playing lately, man?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start us off. So I've been playing some great games recently. So something that I got for my PlayStation VR is a fairly new release called Trover Saves the Universe, which if you're unaware of, it's a VR game that has been, I think it was completely written and everything by Justin Roiland, who is one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. Oh. So, like, he wrote the whole story, and I think he basically does most of the voices in the game, which you can tell because Trover sounds like Morty, and there's a character in it that sounds like Rick. But it is. Yeah, I mean, it is hilarious. Like, it is fantastic. It's a really, really good example of the VR being used, for what VR should be used for.
Sorry to interrupt you, but on that topic, what kind of VR experience is it? Like, it's cartoon-like, right? Is it in that same sort of style as Rick and Morty, or is it? Yeah. And what's the gameplay like? Like, how does VR benefit that?
So. They've actually done something quite clever. So it's the same art style as Rick and Morty, but obviously it's kind of 3D, so it's not 2D cartoon. But what they've done, which is kind of clever, is so the premise of the game is that you play a particular member of a species that's called a Chairopian, and the Chairopians are a species of people that all live sat on hovering chairs and control everything around them with a little controller in front of them. So you sat on your couch, basically. And the idea is that you've got two pet dogs that the main villain has come and kidnapped from you because they will give him this ultimate power that will let him take over the world and everything. What's kind of odd is a lot of the characters in this game basically don't have eyes. They just have eye sockets. So the main villain has taken your two dogs and shoved them into his eye sockets to give himself this power. So the kind of Intergalactic Council or whoever it is have sent Trover, who's this like little guy who also has these kind of eye socket things. They've sent him to come and help you, and because you need to come and get your dogs back. And essentially, you then play the whole game by some of the kind of little power. They're called like power babies. They're like these cute little kind of baby-looking things that he just shoves into his eye holes. And they let you then control him, like he gives you the ability to move him around with your controller. And from that point on, it essentially becomes like a 3D platformer puzzle game. So you're working your way through these levels and you're kind of navigating Trover around the world and like fighting the bad guys and trying to solve the puzzles and stuff.
Yeah, we're looking at a video Derik's showing, and it shows you holding the controller in your hand as you're playing the game.
Yeah, if you look down, because you're playing a Chairopian, like you look down and you can see that you're sat in this chair, like you can see your legs and your hands and holding the controller. It was really, really fun. I have got through about 90% of it, like I'm right near the end of the game. I would say that kind of brings me to my only negative about it is I think at the minute its price point is a little bit too high for what it is and the amount of entertainment it gives you. It's a really, really good game. Like I've had fun the whole way through so far. But in the UK at least, it's about £30, £35, which I think works out about $40, $45 in America. And I would say that that's a little bit too high. I think if they'd have released this game at the kind of £20, $25 mark, that would have been better. I think there would be a lot more people with PlayStation VR who would have picked it up, not necessarily already being a Rick and Morty fan or anything like that. They have said actually on the main title screen as well, it shows that they are bringing in some free DLC for it. So that, depending on what that's like, that might balance out the value to price kind of ratio. But yeah, I would say for anyone that has PlayStation VR, definitely down the line, like if this game drops to like $20 or whatever, pick it up. You will enjoy it, definitely.
Okay, that's cool. What else, man?
So other than that, another game I've been playing, which I have actually had for a little while and just never got around to playing it. And the other day I thought, yeah, no, I'll give it a blast. And I've fallen in love with it. Is a game called Immortal Redneck. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
It's a bit of a bizarre game. It's basically so it's a first-person shooter, very much in the style of like kind of Doom and Quake, or more like Quake. It has that kind of feel to it. But it's also a roguelike. So if Justin, I know you've played Rogue Legacy, but Zack and Derik, are you familiar with the game Rogue Legacy?
Yeah, I brought up.
Love roguelikes.
Yeah, Rogue Legacy. I brought it up in the previous podcast we were on.
I played so much ahead of Vita.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure I'd heard you guys talk about it before. So you'll see exactly the same mechanics in this. The game is kind of light on story. Essentially, the premise is that you are this redneck guy who was kind of just bombing around the desert in his kind of like mud runner vehicle or whatever, and he crashes off of like a cliff and then gets cursed by this like ancient Egyptian curse that means he's now immortal and he's kind of covered in bandages. And you then just have to keep going into a pyramid and working your way up the pyramid and, just trying to get as far as you can before you die. And obviously the first few times, you're going into this pyramid, you're dying really easily. But exactly the same way as a lot of these roguelikes and specifically Rogue Legacy, when you come out of the pyramid and you respawn, you've then got like a skill tree and you can then like purchase, upgrade stats to your attack and to your defense and your health, and you can unlock, so you start with a new weapon or things like that. And you just very slowly build your character up so you can then get further in these pyramids. It is the epitome of like one of those games that's, you finish playing it and you're like, oh, I'll just have one more run kind of thing. Like it's definitely that type of game.
Yeah, I think one thing should be mentioned. You mentioned Rogue Legacy. I see. I'm looking at the video Derik has going, but it's a 3D game. It's in 3D as opposed to Rogue Legacy being in 2D, obviously. But I definitely see the similarities you're talking about.
I love first-person shooter roguelikes.
Yeah, and the progression skill tree looks similar. Even though some of the platforming elements I'm seeing here, yeah, definitely very cool, man. Yeah,
it's really, really cool. It's like I said, it's for people who like roguelikes, you may like it, you may not. The fact that it's not that kind of 2D platformer might put you off. But if you are at all a fan of first-person shooters, and especially the feel of like, those old kind of Quake-style 3D arena shooters, like it controls pretty much the same as those. But yeah, I can't talk more highly about it. I've been having such a blast with it.
Sweet, man. Okay. Anything else? Or you said you were playing a lot of stuff, so.
I did have one more. I didn't want to go too much into everything.
Sorry, man. Do it in a minute. Tell us, what is it?
I'll sum this one up pretty quick. Not one that I was expecting to play, but I actually gave Forza Horizon 4 a go because during E3, Microsoft lowered their Game Pass to like £1 or $1 for the month. And on PC, that gives you access to a slightly smaller library than the Game Pass gives you on the Xbox. But one of the games was Forza Horizon 4. And what kind of drew me to that was that it's a racing game that kind of doesn't take itself too seriously, but also this one specifically is based in England. So, or kind of more like North England and Scotland. So you're doing your kind of racing game stuff, but you're racing around British roads with, you know, all the, like, for me, it's like everything that's familiar.
Makes you feel right at home.
Yeah, exactly. But what I kind of like about the Forza Horizon games as opposed to the main Forza series is, whereas the main series seems to be a bit more kind of simulation and take itself a bit more seriously, in Horizon it's almost like they're given, you know, free range to kind of do whatever they want. So there's just absolutely ridiculous things in it, like you know, there's a race where you're having to race from somewhere like in the north of England into Edinburgh, and you're racing against the Flying Scotsman, which is a train, and so you're in a car and you're like going along and you're kind of, you know, you're hitting jumps where you're flying over it as it goes along the track and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like they've put so many bizarre and weird races in that.
Apparently there's a Lego version, like a Forza Horizon.
DLC recently.
Yeah, exactly. Like the most recent DLC for it is a huge like Lego add-on where you've got a Lego world and loads of Lego cars, and yeah, it's the Forza game that doesn't take itself seriously, and yeah, I had an absolute blast with it. Like I've done pretty much nearly all of the single player content. I'm not too worried about getting too into the multiplayer, but if you wanted to, there is a ton of multiplayer content as well. But yeah, I mean, I had an absolute blast with it, and it cost me £1 to play it, so I can't complain.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's the Saints Row 4 of Forza Horizon games.
Yeah, Forza Horizon is the Saints Row to the GTA that is all Forza, definitely, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Sounds good. All right, Derik, let's hit you up next, man. What have you been playing?
I picked up Darksiders 3 the other day because I love the other two in the series, and it really hasn't disappointed. It's been really, really fun, and now I want to go back and play the other two in series. I put probably 2 hours the first day I've got it, which my first day of rotation from work was yesterday. So I wasted a bunch of hours on that. And in between that, I don't know why, but I'm just sucked into Brutal Doom again, and I want to do all the original episodes in Doom 2. I couldn't tell you what got me to wanting to do it, but...
Clarify what a Brutal Doom is exactly. It's a mod, right?
Brutal Doom's a mod for the original Doom and Doom 2.
Okay.
And it lives up to its name. It makes everything super bloody. The actual execution system from Doom 2016 was at the very least inspired, if not outright stolen from this.
Okay.
But it completely redoes the graphics and everything. It adds in a lot of extra stuff like inventory, new weapons, melee. There's a button just to flip your enemies off.
You just flip them off. That's
yeah.
Great.
Well, it says to insult, offend, or something, but most of the time the Doom guy literally throws up a hand and just... But you actually start with a rifle instead of, crappy little pistol. You have grenades. It's just so... I don't want to say it's a blast because it sounds like a pun, but it's just so much fun. I mean, original Doom is still fun anyway, but to just make it into the gory, blood-soaked GameFest it always should have been, it's almost perfect.
So it just makes it Doom on steroids, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Doom on steroids and steroid rage.
Nice. Cool, man. What else? That it? Anything else? You're always playing a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, I did a couple more Solaris runs, and I've been doing Super Hot Endless Mode. I did that for like 4 hours last night.
Oh, yeah, Super Hot. That's kind of an interesting game. That came out, like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe? Something like that?
Yeah. And one of the there's an Endless Mode you get for beating the game, and one of the things I was doing was just trying to get 20 kills before I died in an Endless Mode. And it was exactly like Sorren described. I'll do one more try. And wait, where'd those 3 hours go again?
So Super Hot is like super hot. Yeah, it's a first person shooter. It's a first person shooter, right? But it's
Yeah, but
what makes
time only moves when you do.
That's right. Okay.
And if you play it like a standard FPS, you will die a lot.
Okay, so whenever you stop moving, it freezes time, basically. So it's just when you're moving.
Just about freezing. I mean, there's still a little bit of movement of time, but it's almost completely stopped.
So you're like the Flash, basically.
Yeah.
Is what it looks like to me.
But then you do stupid stuff like throw your gun across the room. There's a body switch mechanics when you take over an enemy. And it's a lot of stupid fun. It's cheap now on PC. And I want to say it's on PS4, maybe Xbox One. I'm not certain about the second one. But
Okay.
yeah, couldn't recommend it more. And there's a VR version too if you want into that.
If you want to throw up. If you're me.
That's what drama means for Z.
Yeah, I know. I'm always knocking on VR for it's just because my experiences with it have been really vomit inducing.
Well, that's a reasonable thing.
Yeah, so VR and me just don't sit together until the latency gets better and it's like they can get up to 120 frames a second or something where it's really a lot smoother, I guess.
A lot of them are now. Like
Are they?
the benchmark that I used to see on my PC was VR ready. It expects you like 90 is the bare minimum that you're allowed to pass with, but the accepted minimum is about 100 and something. So it's getting there.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
And also, of course, it's going to depend on the game.
Right. Well, the next 10 years, I'll try it again, maybe.
Although, to be honest, like something I've noticed with VR, because I've got the PSVR, there seems to be a big divide between the games where you are stationary and the games where you're not. So, like,
Yes.
most people do get the motion sickness when you're doing something, like a racing game or something where you're moving, because your body or your brain gets confused because your body isn't feeling that movement. Whereas if you're playing a game where you are stationary and you just kind of like teleport to a different position and then look around, that seems to be a lot smoother, and like people tend to be more okay with that. Because that's what Super Hot is like on PlayStation VR. Like, you don't move around. You just, like, I think you basically do each level from one position.
Yeah.
You do a new level. But, yeah, I got no motion sickness in that game.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at getting an Oculus for my PC.
Okay, so all right, yeah, that's what I thought too. Isn't Arkham? I think Arkham VR on PSVR is like that too, where you just kind of teleport around. Yeah, that was my issue. Is I forget what game I tried, but I tried a couple, but they were all ones where you were walking through the world, and oof, yeah, it was bad, man. But all right, cool. Why don't we move on to Justin, man? What you been playing?
So, little mix of things. I like to try and throw in an old 80s game, usually an arcade game, just to keep myself on my toes. And more recently, I've been playing Bomb Jack. I don't know if this is a game anyone's familiar with. It's a game from 1984. I think it's Toejam. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Exactly what you'd expect from a 1980s arcade game. It's single screen, collect bombs, complete screen, move to next screen, try and get as high score as you can. But what's got me back into this is a game that I had on my Commodore when I was a kid. It was a game I played in the arcade, and it's on that kind of rotation of my top 10, 20 sort of games I'll play on my MAME emulator or whatever that might be. But more recently, myself and Sorren actually went to, there's a couple of, how can I describe these, like arcade worlds, these retro arcade clubs that have set up in the United Kingdom. And they're absolutely jam-packed full of original old arcade machines. And we were there recently with a few friends. And that was one of the machines that I made a bit of a beeline for, and really found myself just getting back in it and just getting that kind of really quick buzz of, I have to have one more go. I have to have one more go. Just try and beat that high score. Just keep moving with that. So, that's something that I've been kind of just keeping on rotation in my 80s arcade specials. But yeah, I've got two others more modern games that I think people will probably resonate with a little bit more. First one, I want to do myself. How can I describe this? I want to cause myself a small problem here. I want to say something that I know is going to come back to bite me square on the arse. So what is it? So Yeah, well, here we go. Wait for this. So for Zack and for Sorren, you know, the reason that we know each other is because of Toejam and Earl. Specifically in this instance, Toejam and Earl back in the groove. Now, I have made a small song and dance about the fact that I have not yet died on any run. I've had 100% completion success rate in all modes.
Really?
Normal mode, hard mode, fixed world, random, all this good stuff. Now, I thought the other day, okay, they've actually just released a patch where they've changed some of the aggro. There were a few little tweaks because some of the things were kind of just not easy, but there were ways you could kind of cheat the system, I felt, to sort of get through without too much problem. And they've changed them. So I thought, well, okay, let's put this 100% success rate to the test. Still out there, guys. 100%, still rocking it. Now,
Well, why don't we play the game together sometime, and then I can get you killed.
yeah, I'd like to stress this is
Open a total bummer.
yeah, this is a solo mode only. But what I'm waiting for, why I'm setting myself up to be bitten square on the arse, is that I know they are planning the V1.5 patch for July, and within that they have an extreme mode, which I was geeky enough to watch Twitch run on this the other day, an early showing of it, and it was brutal. So I am waiting to put my 100% success rate to the test. So I had to give that a go recently, give a few runs on that, but everything was good. But a game I would like to finish with, so as not to steal too much time. Now this is a game for me that has been, you must have those, you know, when you go through the kind of what games are on the discount list this week, what's on the digital downloads this week, and you kind of scroll through these games and you constantly point at that game, you go, oh yeah, no, I'm going to get around to playing that, and then 2 years later it's in the bargain bin and you still don't buy it, you know.
Yep.
Anyway, what inspired me to take this on this time is actually that the sequel to it has been released, and the sequel to it really grabbed me, and I was like, I've got to play the original to make sure it's good, I like it, it is what it is. Now, the sequel that was recently announced was Cadence of Hyrule. So the original is Crypt of the Necrodancer. Now, Crypt of the Necrodancer is effectively a, how can I describe it? A rhythm-based roguelike game. So yeah, as you would expect. So you are effectively encouraged to move to the beat of all different dance tracks, which are it's a really, really good musical score. And the way in which you move, kind of, imagine moving square at a time, square, square, square. The enemies and the kind of things that are in the dungeon also move at the same time, but they have different attack patterns and all of this sort of thing. It actually comes together to form a really, really intelligent little game. A really deep game as well. So it's got a great challenge to it. The learning and the challenge curve is brilliant because you've got your classic permadeath, you know, to start with. You're just absolutely getting battered. But every time you go back, there's something else, there's something new. You're starting to work your way through the dungeon, lots of unlocks. And the musical score, if you like 16-bit inspired dance music, which I can only assume we all do, is absolutely wonderful. And yeah, right now it was £4, which for me is the equivalent of the digital bargain basement in the Blockbuster store. So £4, I got to see if I would like it. I'm loving it. I can't put it down. Absolutely fantastic. And to layer on Cadence of Hyrule, which is effectively the Zelda franchise on top of it, I'm just really, really looking forward to that.
It looks like a Link to the Past, like the art style, you know, kind of.
Indeed.
I was going to say Minish Cap.
Yeah.
Or even Minish Cap, yeah, would be another good example. Yeah, for sure. It looks cool. Yeah.
It's really, it has got, I mean, in an odd way, it's got a Zelda feel to it. So the blend of the two shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was a surprise when I saw it, and then when I kind of gave it more thought, it's like, no, these two are a beautiful blend. It really comes together. And I say, it's just such a nice little game. It's got depth, and it's got that learning curve, but it's got that pick up and play. It's got a lot to it, and I mean, maybe I didn't know what to expect, but I've been blown away by it, and yeah, I don't want to put it down. Simple as that.
It's crazy the genres that are being blended nowadays. You know, it's like they're just trying everything. Like I'm looking at it. You know, Derek's got a video up, and it looks like it just looks like a Zelda game, except with and like Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero or something mixed in with the little bar at the bottom going and hopping around. It's really interesting, man. Super interesting.
It's a very clever mix, and I've heard some of the remixes of the original Zelda tunes and the newer Zelda tunes to be sort of retrofit into the more 16-bit sound and be applied to the game. I mean, it's just beautiful. It really is. It's a great score.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, on that note, we can get to what I've been playing, which is only one game lately, because that's all I've had time for. But it's all right. Justin and Sorren, you might like this, but I've been playing. I mentioned it on Twitter the other day. I've been playing Solar Jetman: The Hunt for the Golden Warp Ship. It's an NES, a later gen NES game, released in 1990. I don't believe it was released in Japan. It was just released in Europe and North America. It was developed by some British guys. And it's actually was Rare released it. It was Rare was around, I think, since '85 or '86 maybe. But basically, there's some interesting facts about Solar Jetman I wanted to talk about. It's part of the Jetman series, which started with Jetpack and Lunar Jetman, which were both released on the ZX Spectrum. So I'm sure that you guys will appreciate that, because we didn't have the ZX Spectrum over here. At least it wasn't as big here as it was over there in the UK back in the 80s. For those who don't know,
there was a version released here. It was the Timex 1000, I believe.
Okay.
Essentially an NTSC Spectrum, but it wasn't compatible with most of the stuff they had.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was going to say, for those that aren't familiar with the ZX Spectrum, it's basically a British microcomputer. Sinclair, right? Was that who?
Yeah, it was Sinclair.
That's correct. Yeah, it was a Sinclair.
Okay. So anyway, this was the second sequel to Jetpack, which I didn't know any of this until I started doing research for this game, because I've been playing this game for years and I love it. I play it every couple of years I'll pop it in and play it. It was I should say Tim and Chris Stamper were the guys that started Rare, and but they weren't the guys that did this game. I think Derek, look up who did this game real quick. I can't remember their names. I want to say Stay or Stu or
yes, Stay and John Pickford. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Pickford. Okay, yeah, some down kitty, some British guys. Yes, they've designed a lot of games. Some games on the ZX Spectrum too. But yeah, it was a Rare game released on the NES. David Wise did the music, who also has done a ton of classic games, a lot of Rare games, Battletoads, the Donkey Kong Country series. I think more recently he did the Ukulele, did all the music for that game. So he did the music. As far as the game itself, it's basically a multi-directional shooter, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And basically you're going from planet to planet, exploring these labyrinths, and you have to take gravity into account. So the game has actual inertia. So you kind of like Asteroids almost, where you can power your jet and you go flying towards a wall, and the gravities are different on each planet. So the gravity will suck you down, or even if the gravities are really low, it's almost the opposite effect. So it's kind of cool for an NES game. It's pretty interesting and kind of it's simple and it's complex at the same time. I guess it seems like the physics are a little more advanced than most NES games you're going to see. With the way it works. So basically, you're flying around in the labyrinth, and you have to tow ship pieces back, and you find loot. You can find loot, and you can buy stuff in a shop. Every other planet you go to has a shop that you can go to, and you can buy new pods, like a new ship. You can buy new engines, new weapons, all kinds of stuff. And basically, if your pod gets destroyed, you eject Jetman, the original Jetman, I guess. You ejects out of the pod, and you get to control him. But he's super vulnerable, so you die in like one or two hits with Jetman if you get your pod destroyed. But one thing that I really liked was the final stage. When you get to the final stage and you complete all the pieces of the warp ship, you actually get to fly the warp ship in like a side-scrolling shmup style stage, and it's really, really hard. I haven't made it that far since, I think, college. I picked the game up in college, and I was playing it, and I made it that far, but I haven't made it that far yet. But it's a really cool game, man. I've really enjoyed it quite a bit. I know there's some people that don't like it because I say it's a little too cumbersome with all the collecting and the dragging around, but it's almost roguelike in some ways because you can, if you if you die, just you can go right back to your ship and get a new pod and basically start over and try again, you know. So, and you know, obviously the exploration of the caves and all that. So yeah, pretty cool game. Had any of you guys heard of that? I know Derik probably has, but have you guys heard of that game, Solar Jetman?
So I I saw your tweet and had a quick kind of look because I think you posted a couple of pictures and that as well.
Yeah, I did.
And I had a look at it, and it did seem a little bit familiar. And now, like, I didn't realise that it was made by Rare, but now I'm thinking about it. I don't know if that game is on there, but I think the older ones you mentioned that were from, you know, a lot further back, I think they're on that Rare replay, you know, that compilation.
Yeah, Solar Jetman is too, I think. I believe it is.
I'm almost certain it is.
Yeah.
Is that what the one you've played is on there as well?
Yeah, I believe Solar Jetman is on there, yeah.
But the jetpack that's on there is like the updated re-release they did for Xbox Live Arcade a few years ago, and I don't think it's the actual Spectrum game.
Okay, so they also did an update of Jetpack also. Okay,
yeah.
That's cool. I've never played either of the original two. This was my first entry into that series, so I didn't even, like I said, I didn't even know it was a series. But this one goes way above and beyond what the first two games do. At least it seems like there's a lot more to it, and it's a really. I'd recommend. You got to have patience, you know. Like with any roguelike type of game, you got to have patience, you know, to get through it. But it's a lot of fun. So
I think that's something that I really like as well. Is when you go back and you kind of find a slightly older game, you know, kind of a retro game, and you like it. It has mechanics on it and, you know, features that you just don't expect of a game of that time frame.
Yeah.
I mean, like everything that you were saying there about what you can do in that game and all the kind of collecting and the building the ship, and then even the fact that once you've built the ship, there's then like a side-scrolling kind of R-type styly, you know, level, and that's on the NES. Like,
I know. It was a later gen NES game. It was 1990, so it was later. So they were getting more advanced. But yeah, dude, for an NES game, and this wasn't even a game that I played. I had played it as a kid. My friend rented it. I played it once as a kid, and what stuck out to me was the mechanics. And so years later, I thought that game was kind of cool. I remember that game from years ago. I'm going to try it, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's a good one to check out if you haven't. So all right. I think that's all I've been playing, like I said. So why don't we move on to our first discussion topic, which is going to be the best game franchises that are currently dormant. So there are over 60,000 video games that have been produced since the infancy of the hobby. I looked this up to see. I'm like, I wonder how many video games have been made, and it's somewhere in the range of about 60,000 ever video games. So some of these games are successful enough to warrant multiple games, and then a franchise is born. But the sheer number of games released ensures that some of these franchises will fall into obscurity and eventually lie dormant. So we're here to talk about those games that are in dormancy right now. So who wants to go first? Who'd like to take it away? Justin, go for it.
Yeah, I've got a couple here, and both of these actually, in their time, started to build a franchise. I.e., I think both of them had at least 3 games in their series, and they were both reasonably critically acclaimed, but for no necessarily good reason, unless it was just shipping units or just didn't make the sales, maybe just didn't carry on. So the first one, this is one that's synonymous, I believe, with a British production house, and has actually, oddly, in the last few months, just had a press release to say that it's going to come out of dormancy, but oddly, for a console that I have to confess I hadn't even heard. So the game series is Earthworm Jim. Now I'm going to have to go ahead and believe that this was as big in North America as it was in the UK.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
That series.
Look, this was just the right game at the right time, at the right age for me. I was probably slightly younger than the market it was intended at. I don't know. I think it's one of those games that if I go back now and see some of the humor, I'm thinking, yeah, that totally went over my head when I was a teenager or a young boy or whatever that was. I think they were sort of mid-90s. I'm going to guess 94 was roughly when that came out.
94. Quick question for you. Genesis or Super NES version?
Oh, good question. So for me, that would be SNES.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Genesis
I know.
version.
Wrong answer, bud.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay. Both
you
versions
guys-
are great, but the Genesis supposedly has an edge. For
Yeah, the
whatever.
Genesis Mega Drive versions are supposedly the better ones for both. They've got a little more stuff to both of them.
Yeah, you've totally busted my balls on this before as well. It's like the console wars are back. It's like growing up again. It's fantastic. Yeah, so great game. All of the humor, all of the comedy, everything that kind of came with it. But you actually had a great platformer in there as well. You had a very complete game. Pulled through to second game was still 2D. I think the third game was the 3D version. Was Earthworm Jim 3D. This was now interestingly, this divides. This divides people. You see, this is another one of those brilliantly divisive things. I didn't actually play it very much, but for the small amount I did play it, I actually quite enjoyed it. My issue with it at the time would have been that it would naturally have got compared to things like Super Mario 64, which is one of the greatest early 3D games that you're ever going to get in the world ever. Lay that one to rest. But it was a great series. As a kid growing up as well, I loved the whole franchise. There was a cartoon spin-off which was equally zany. It was fantastic. And I think this all came to a crashing end in about 1999, which is why we had this 20-year gap. That to me is complete dormancy. This has effectively been laying there waiting to be brought back. Recently, there was the announcement that it's coming back, because there was always rumours in the sort of mid to late noughties that Earthworm Jim 4 was going to come back and da-da-da-da, usual kind of stuff.
Just wait till we hear how it's coming back, though. Continue.
and then it got announced recently, and they said, yeah, there's going to be a new game. This is absolutely Doug Ten Maple, who's the producer of the game, said, yeah, this is true. It's going to be for the new Intellivision console. At which point I went straight to Google and went, what in the blue hell is the new Intellivision console? And then looked at it and did what I did, which is now I'm an adult, looked at it from a business perspective and went, eek, this looks like an absolute car crash from the start. I can only hope that what they're doing is putting Earthworm Jim 4 on this to gauge market reaction and then hopefully port it to the consoles that people have actually bought, which isn't going to be.
I think, well, there's also the creator of Earthworm Jim. I can't remember his name. Derik.
Doug Tennapel.
Who is he?
Doug Tennapel.
Okay, yeah. Doug is involved in this new Intellivision console. He's one of the, producers or investors or something. So that's why this is
That
happening.
would make sense.
Yeah, that's why it's happening. And I hope you're right. I really hope that. I think that'd be crazy not to eventually maybe give it a year or 6 months of exclusivity, kind of like these Epic deals they're doing at the Epic Store, and then release it elsewhere, because I ain't buying the freaking Intellivision console. Even as much as I love Earthworm Jim, which is one of my favorite game franchises of all time, I'm not going to buy an Intellivision just to play it. It's not happening.
It's odd that they would pick the Intellivision to bring it back.
I know, dude.
I mean, now granted, the people behind it are solid. I mean, Tennapel done great stuff. Tommy Tallarico is one of the big guys behind it. He's one of the best composers in video game history. But man,
yeah, it's. I mean, I looked at the trailer, and you're playing it right now. It was a really, really impressive, well done, professional looking trailer. So we'll see. But even so, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about this Intellivision? Sorren, have you looked at this new Intellivision console at all?
So the only thing I've seen of it is I think I've seen some of the images of like what the console actually looks like. I don't know if they were the concept images or if they are actually final production images. The only other kind of interesting thing is like some of the people that I follow on YouTube and things like that, who got the chance to go to E3, they went to like a behind closed doors thing where they got to actually test it out and kind of, playtest and that. But I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I tend to fall on the side of like, this might be a bad thing. All of them had to sign like, you know, ridiculously locked down NDAs and things like that. Like, they were allowed to come in and test it and kind of play about, but they cannot say a word about their experience now afterwards. So I think the NDA will probably run out literally the day the console comes out, which is, I don't know. That tends to not be a great sign.
Yeah, I just saw in the trailer it said all games that are going to be released for it are console exclusive. So
Wow.
maybe that spells doom for Earthworm Jim going anywhere else.
It's
Bonkers.
destined to fail. It's, you know, like I said, I'm going to put my adult spin on it now. Boo for growing up. Boo. But it is to do with video games. Look, the future, whether we like it or not, is a flavour of the likes of Google Stadia, right?
Right.
It is online.
Eventually.
It is, yeah, absolutely. And this is a whole other topic that I can bore everyone senseless with another day. But the concept of lockdown and exclusivity is gone. The concept of specific consoles is gone. You know, you've got Microsoft and Nintendo working closely together. Why? Because they need to, for both of their sakes, to be the next big thing to take on the likes of a Google Stadia and blah blah blah. This is too late to the market. Do you know what this reminds me of? Right, here's a blast from the past. This reminds me of something called the Philips CDI. Remember that little fella? There he is. See, I knew someone would. Absolutely.
If I see Zelda Faces of Evil on this thing, I will buy it just to burn it.
Oh, was that the one with the with the derpy Link in it?
Yes, exactly what it was.
The only time Link ever spoke was in that derpy game, if I'm not right.
Yeah. Just shocking. So look, you know, if I'm wrong, you know, the whole internet can point at me and go, hey, it was that guy. That was the guy that said, oh, look, fine, I'll take that. I will take my chances because it's going to fail. It is destined to fail, not because it is a terrible console or that it doesn't have a good catalogue of games or it's you're too late to the party. You know, this is just crazy. Anyway, that's probably a digression.
Well, what about the Atari? I mean, Atari's releasing one too. You know, you got the Atari console coming out, which is going to be like $350 or something, or $400. I think the outfit, the whole thing with controllers, everything, is going to be over $400. Is anyone going to buy an Atari console that apparently is pretty underpowered too?
Why would you pay the same price as the other consoles?
That's crazy.
That's not going to have the games.
Well,
I'll die on the same hill you are. Amico is going to die off, so if you're worried about any games on it that are exclusive right now, give it a few months.
Yeah,
I mean, the controllers are touchscreen with a little circle at the bottom.
It looks like an iPod. I know that they mimic the classic Intellivision controllers, but how are you going to play anything on that? I mean, I'm assuming you can plug in a regular controller if you want, but it just seems...
It's got USB ports, so possibly.
Yeah. I don't know.
I didn't realize that about the Atari console, because Justin and I were talking about that not too long ago. Because at that point I'd only heard that they were bringing something out, but I said that only works if they bring out something along the lines of like what Nintendo did with the NES Mini and the SNES Mini and things like that. Like if they brought out like a little kind of mini version of their Atari 2600 or whatever, and it was preloaded with 30, 40, 50 games, whatever, that's the kind of niche thing that they should be going for. I had no idea they were actually trying to compete. This
is that, and it's a full-fledged console, basically. Although not one that's as powerful as I think even the PS4 or the Xbox One at this point. I mean, I read an article somewhere where a guy at E3 was able to. He was playing Borderlands 2 on it, and he said even Borderlands 2 wasn't running great on this Atari. I guess it's just the Atari VCS they're calling it. So I don't know, man. But anyway, we're a bit off topic here. But Sorren, since you're already talking, back to the topic.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah. Which game series is lying dormant for you that you'd like to talk about?
Okay, so I've got a couple here, but there's one that is it stings way more than the other one because I'm such a big fan of it. It is the TimeSplitters franchise.
Oh, I love those, man.
Oh man, like for me, back in the day, I used to play an absolute ton of things like GoldenEye on the N64, like especially when I was at school and that. Like that's pretty much all we played is GoldenEye. And when it was kind of weird, actually, I think TimeSplitters 2 had already come out before I'd even discovered the franchise existed. But I ended up picking up the first one literally in like a bargain bin for like, £5 or something. Like it was nothing. And I got it home and it instantly gave me the same kind of feel and vibe of GoldenEye. Like it had these kind of quick missions that you could run through and you could kind of speed run, and it had like I think the first one still had the multiplayer in it. Yeah, so it had that kind of frantic multiplayer, and it was just so good. And then obviously that inspired me to get number 2, and then Future Perfect number 3, and I've loved all of them, and I've played them to death. And then and it's not like they even did badly. Like they were really widely critically acclaimed, and like everyone enjoyed them, and it just kind of stopped. Like there was just nothing for ages, and every time a rumor came up that they were maybe working on a 4th one, or we were going to get something, that those rumors just tended to fizzle out, and we never heard anything. And to me it's just absolutely mind-boggling that this franchise is out there and it hasn't had anything for so long. The only silver lining and little kind of ray of hope is that I know recently there was a new story that said that THQ Nordic, I think, have acquired the rights. And something that THQ Nordic have been doing, especially in the past year or so, is they've been taking these kind of older games, giving them like a kind of a little bit of a spruce up and kind of, making them like HD and that, and then re-releasing them. So if that happens, I mean, my absolute kind of, dream is that we get TimeSplitters 4. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but if THQ Nordic are planning on re-releasing either TimeSplitters 2 or Future Perfect on modern consoles, adapted with, so it now works with the modern control schemes, and it's got the online multiplayer and everything like that, I think potentially you've got something that is going to go down really, really well with everyone, and could be the catalyst that then makes them decide to actually work on a new game. But I mean, can you imagine like either TimeSplitters 2 or Future Perfect like releasing on Switch or something like that?
Yeah,
like
that'd be perfect, man. With online play maybe or something, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like TimeSplitters 2, I played a lot of in college, and I think it was a natural evolution of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. I think we just kind of moved on from, I think, Perfect Dark at that point to TimeSplitters. I didn't really play much of the first one, but the second one we played.
That's the one I played a lot of.
Yeah, we played that to death. I think for about a year and a half in college, that was our go-to, first-person shooter that we play together. And then, of course, Halo came out, and that took over everything. But
yeah,
for me anyway.
I think like as well. I mean, I doubt that TimeSplitters was the first game to do this, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. I think it was, I don't know if it had it in TimeSplitters 1, but in TimeSplitters 2, it was the first game that I played as well where you could do the multiplayer with bots. You didn't have to have, your friends round. So like for me personally, that meant that I just played it even more because I played it when I had my friends round. But if I didn't have anyone to play with, I would just play against the computer AI. Like, and I don't think it was the first game to do that, but it was one of the first games that I played that did that. And
that's cool. So you mean you would, if you wanted to play multiplayer but no one was around, you could play multiplayer except just with bots?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, actually, that's an interesting...
looks like the first one was a mod for Quake.
A mod for Quake. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So-
The first one did get a proper release as well.
Yeah. I've got good news for you. There's a project called TimeSplitters Rewind that's using the current Crysis 3 engine done by members of Crytek UK, which were a lot of former members of Free Radical Design who did the original TimeSplitters game. That's the video got up right now. It's a PC mod, but they hope to make it into a TimeSplitters 4. But they, as of this year, are still working on it. And that's the video I've got showing up now.
Yeah, see, yeah. I mean, like, so that's one of the things where I said, like, that was one of the rumors and things. Like, I know there was those guys working on that, but I mean, they've been working on that for ages, and it was kind of hit and miss. And like, you know, it's like, oh, are they going to get to release it? Because you know, I think they were kind of doing it almost like a fan project. So
yeah,
you know, you were constantly thinking like, are they going to get like any day now? Are they going to get a cease and desist and not be able to do it? But the last rumor I heard about that was that whoever owned the IP at that time, because I think it is THQ Nordic now, but whoever owned the IP at that time, they were like, no, that's fine, guys. You go ahead, you know, just make it, and we'll keep an eye on it. And if we like what you do, we will help you release it. That was kind of like the last I heard, but I don't know if that's now kind of, you know, been kind of thrown out of the window a bit with THQ Nordic now owning the IP. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know is I just want more TimeSplitters because
Yeah.
I don't know why it's laying dormant. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's weird how certain franchises just, even though they're successful, just kind of, you know, fade away. Maybe the sales of TimeSplitters 3 weren't as good as they wanted, so they just put it on ice. Yeah, who knows? You know, it's an interesting conundrum. All right, who hasn't gone yet? Derik? Yeah, I can go if you want. For me, it's the Ultima series, which is a big, obvious choice for me if you know me. Technically, Ultima Online is still going, but you know, it's at this point, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's EA for one. EA has butchered and maimed and killed Ultima many times, but you know, and technically, there is Richard Garriott, the original designer of the Ultima games. He's a bit of a eccentric kind of eccentric kind of dude. He's been to space. I believe he was the first space tourist ever. He paid some ungodly amount of money and went up in a rocket. His father was an astronaut, I believe. And I think I mentioned this before on one of the previous podcasts, but if you play Ultima 2, which was released in early 80s, the end of the game, you actually jump on a space shuttle and you fly up to the moon or something. So anyway, yeah, he's a bit of an eccentric dude, and he crowdfunded a game back in, I want to say 2013, called Shroud of the Avatar. And it's in essence the spiritual successor to the Ultima series, because he couldn't get the name back from EA, or he didn't want to pay for the name. But Shroud of the Avatar is a bit of a clusterfuck, to put it nicely, I guess. It's basically devolved into a bunch of whales, as they call them, guys with a lot of money and nothing to do, buying up the game, buying up real estate in the game, and it's basically just about buying stuff in the game now with real money. It's really, I don't know, it's really not what I wanted from that. What I wanted was a nice hardcore single player RPG. And the Ultima series, I think, has been dormant. I think EA tried to resurrect it back in 2013, I think, they did a remake of Ultima 4, which was, they did it as a mobile game. And this is the type of mobile game where you would open a treasure chest. It was a free-to-play type thing. You'd open a treasure chest and it would play an advertisement, like a video ad, before you could collect what was in the chest. This is the type of game they were doing. Okay, so bravo to EA for that. Yeah, I know. They've butchered it, man. The last true Ultima game was Ultima 9, which was released in, I think, 1999 was the last one Garriott worked on, and it jumped into the 3D realm for the first time. And Ultima 9 was a kind of a big mess at the time. It was too ambitious, and PCs couldn't run it well enough back then. But I think modders have basically fixed the game since then. From what I've heard, I haven't played it in years, but yeah, there were 10 or I guess 11 original Ultima games, and there hasn't been one in quite a while, and it makes me very sad, because I wish it's one of my favorite series of all time. I've played through most of them. I've mentioned before, but Ultima 7, there's 2 Ultima 7s, Part 1 and Part 2, are some of the most in-depth RPGs you'll ever find. I've been playing the Divinity lately, the Divinity 2, Original Sin 2, and very much in that spirit of the Ultima game. So I guess I'm just getting my fix there. But yeah, the Ultima series, I would really like to see a proper Ultima game made. Maybe just keep Richard Garriott out of it, and someone buys the rights to the series away from EA's prying dirty hands and makes a proper sequel. An actual Ultima 10. That's what I want. I don't think it'll ever happen, but you never know.
It is bizarre though, isn't it? Because when you think of how often those kind of like fantasy RPG, like massive open world games, like come out, that you would think that whoever does, if it's EA, if they own the IP, you've got something there that instantly gives you a leg up. Like you come out with a new massive RPG, like fantasy RPG, it doesn't necessarily get lost with all the others because instantly people are like, oh, hang on, sorry, what? That's an Ultima game. Like, you've got the name there. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't use it.
Yeah, my theory is that it's just been forgotten, basically. It's been gone for so long. Other than some hardcore fans that still play Ultima Online, and I can't believe EA still has that going. They must be making money on it, which is why the only reason the servers are still running. That Ultima Online and EverQuest were the original 2 MMOs. Released in the late 90s. Dude, it's been over 20 years. It's crazy that it's still running at this point. So I would think that you'd at least get a sequel to Ultima Online. At least EA would be interested in doing that. But at this point, man, EA is the devourer of worlds, the destroyer of worlds, and everything they touch, if it's not immediately successful, BioWare is the next thing that they're going to be gone next. Because Anthem was a kind of a disaster, and it's like I think BioWare has one more Dragon Age game to get it right before they're going to be chopped up like Origin Systems was originally, which is ones that did Ultima. So it is weird, but yeah, that's my series is the Ultima series. So who hasn't gone yet? Derik?
Honestly, BioWare. I'd love to see another like full trilogy of Mass Effect games because that's the best sci-fi world in video games. It's so self-consistent. And I love Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't care what anyone says. But I'd love to see that come back. Other than that, I'd like to see Red Alert get a 4th game that's not too far into camp. Because Red Alert 3 was just too campy. It was still fun, but it always had some camp, but there's overboard. And just don't see any like RTS games that don't take themselves seriously.
It's Command and Conquer Red Alert, right?
Yeah. The World War II setting. It's not really World War II.
Right, okay.
But I'd love to see that come back. Other than that, I can't really think of what you guys have to touch.
Like, if they bring Red Alert back, though, like, you kind of have to have Tim Curry in it. So they can get, they've got to go to space.
Once you have Tim Curry in a series, you always have to have Tim Curry. That's like a law. It's in the Bible, isn't it?
Which Command and Conquer game was Billy D. Williams in? He was in one of them, one of the newer ones. I think it might have been the last Command and Conquer.
It might have been like Tiberian Twilight or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure, but the Command and Conquer. Even Command and Conquer series in general is another one that's gone dormant because EA doesn't know what to do with it. I guess they're not going to be making real-time strategy games.
Yeah, the last few were bad. Oh, I'm sorry. It is Command and Conquer 3 Tiberian Wars.
Okay, it was Tiberian Wars. Okay.
And the Generals game was a standalone Command and Conquer game that was like a modern, like, Tom Clancy series. I'd love to see another one like that. But I'm a Tom Clancy fan. Let's face it, he's not going to be doing anything else anytime soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Okay.
Ubisoft hasn't gotten the memo, apparently.
Yeah, they're just going to keep pushing their Tom Clancy stuff, and 100 years after he's been dead, I guess.
How long can they really keep stuff going? Like, okay, Rainbow Six, if you're doing sequels, I get, because he did author the Rainbow Six book, but Division was nothing to do with him, and a lot of like Splinter Cell stuff he had nothing to do with. Like, how many new franchises can you release after he's been dead for 5 years?
Has it only been 5 years? It feels like it's been longer than that, but yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, Tom Clancy isn't a person; it's a brand now. You know, it's like when
Well, he's definitely not a person now.
well,
Cheers.
yeah, well, you know, he's a brand. It's like Kiss, you know, like the band Kiss. You know, they're on their third farewell tour or something. I don't know, second, third farewell tour. When they're done, there will still be a brand of Kiss, you know, that will continue. So I just look at Tom Clancy kind of that way. You know, they just stick his name on something, and you know, and they'll sell more of it. So all right, what is anyone? Did you go, Justin?
He started it.
I did. I started it off, but can I throw one honourable mention back in?
Sure, go for it.
Maybe to round it off. So I'm always conscious of the fact that me and Sorren will probably have very similar lists for things, or at least we possibly.
Can't imagine why.
Absolutely no idea. And I wondered if this might be on his list. So a quick honourable mention would be a game that we invested a unbelievable amount of time in on the Super Nintendo when we were kids. There was definitely a couple more on the N64, and I think this has been dormant for 20 years, but it was a hell of a game. It was a game called Legend of the Mystical Ninja.
Oh,
and
it's fun.
And I think that was the North American and European title. I think in Japan it was called Gambare Goemon.
Yes.
And I think that the follow-ups on the N64 were actually referred to, even in the European regions and in American regions, as Gambare Goemon 64 or Goemon 64. It was just an amazing game. It was an amazing cooperative game. It was fun. It had that kind of Japanesey feel to it. It was just superb, and it lent itself well to 3D. And then, poof, out of nowhere, it just, I don't know why. I don't know.
Konami, right? It was a Konami series, right?
It was a Konami series.
There you go.
Yeah, they just don't like money.
Well, I mean, I like money. Maybe they could have given it to me.
Well, they're not making much. Did you see how Metal Gear Survive did?
Oh, no.
Well, and do you see what the new Contra game looks like? The new Contra game looks like a pile of horse shit, honestly.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
It looks horrible. I mean, it looks like reminds me almost of Legacy of War, like that horrible PS1 Contra that they did, you know, which I think wasn't even developed by Konami. But yeah, and this isn't developed by Konami either. It's an outside studio. So yeah, just
freaking let our Way Forward do it. My God, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. We have the real Contra game coming out this year is called Blazing Chrome, which looks absolutely amazing. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. I've been waiting for years for this Blazing Chrome game. It looks like Contra Hardcore mixed with like a Metal Slug game or something like that. It just looks.
I love Metal Slug.
It looks
so
amazing.
There's another series I'd kill to see come back.
Yeah, look up Blazing Chrome. I don't even care about the new Contra game because Blazing Chrome is going to be the next Contra game as far as I'm concerned. These guys, it's made by a couple, a guy and a girl with a small indie studio, and I believe they're from Brazil, a little studio out of Brazil. I watched some of their making of, some of their update videos they were doing, and it just looks amazing. So you can see that, yeah, he's playing the video now. I mean, look at that, dude. It just looks pretty.
Holy crap.
Pretty good, man. Wow, there's even they got guys with swords too. I just noticed.
I already bought 2 games because of you jackasses tonight.
Yes. Oh man. Well, all right. Anyway, I think we've exhausted this topic. Let's take a little break, and when we come back, we will move on to our second discussion topic. We're back. So, topic number 2. The best game you've never played, a.k.a. Hidden Gems. No, just kidding. The best game you've never played. So the term Hidden Gem has become incredibly popular in the age of YouTube. I feel like every YouTube channel has done a Hidden Gems video. I haven't, thankfully. But and I'm not knocking it, but it's just that it's kind of, you know, it's been done to death. But every gaming YouTube channel has them, and my argument is nothing's really hidden anymore. It's like the internet exists, and everyone has seen everything, it seems like, or if you haven't seen it, you've heard of it, or If you think you're the only person that's played it, somebody else has. But, you know, there's still games that remain less popular regardless. So let's talk about some. Who wants to go first?
So if you don't mind, if I could take this one first, just because my main pick for this, I've got a few options, but my main pick for this is actually kind of like a double whammy in that it also kind of ticks the box of the last topic as well, in that it is a game franchise that's kind of laying dormant. But this one, so it's possible that it isn't a kind of a hidden gem. It might be that quite a lot of people did play it, but all I do know is that the vast majority of people that I speak to about it have either never heard of it, or if they have, they're like, oh yeah, no, I never played that. And it just doesn't seem to really get talked about much anymore. But it's a game, an RPG that released on the Xbox 360 in the late 2000s called Lost Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, have you guys heard of that?
Yeah.
I've heard the name, but not familiar.
So it's a weird one because it's a completely new franchise. Like when it released, it was a completely new franchise. It was written and kind of created by, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's Hironobu Sakaguchi, who is the creator of Final Fantasy. So he came up with this entirely new world. I mean, it could have been. Like this easily could have been a Final Fantasy game. Like, you know, they could have stuck Final Fantasy on it, and it's got just as much depth in the, you know, the world building and the lore of everything.
Was it a Mistwalker game?
Was it a what? Sorry,
a Mistwalker game. That's a studio he made. Like, I think the music was done by you know, I'm gonna butcher that pronunciation. Uematsu. My redneck ass can't say Japanese shit.
It wouldn't surprise me if they brought out a load of like the top talent for this, because it had really good production values, like the cutscenes and the CGI. You know, the movies were all really great. The score was great. It's a really cool game with a really cool world. Like it's based around like the world, like we have magic in the world, and about 30 years before the start of the game, something caused the magic to suddenly just like spike, and it became really, really powerful, and everyone started harnessing it. So 30 years on, you're now living in a world that's kind of a magic industrial world, so that its magic has become essentially like their electricity and their power, and you know, things like that. And you're in this world where there's, you know, a few different nations kind of like vying for control of the world, and you come into it, excuse me, just as I think it's just as a massive meteor has hit, whilst there's a huge battle going on, and you play as this guy. I think he's called like Kaim or something like that, and he's an immortal. And there are characters in this game who are immortals, and that it isn't just for the story. Like that actually affects gameplay as well. So it very much is a JRPG. It's a turn-taking battle system, you know, random encounters and, you know, and all that on the world map. But with your immortals, they have like the ability to learn skills and things off of other characters that fight in the same party as them. But also, if any of your immortal characters kind of get knocked out during a fight, like if you can kind of hang on, you don't have to use like so in Final Fantasy you'd use like a Phoenix down to bring them back. You can do that, but if it's an immortal character, after a few turns they will just get up again because they can't be killed. So it does have kind of gameplay, you know, effect on gameplay in that as well. But it was such a good game. I you know, from the moment I started that, I didn't want to put it down. I just kept playing it. I actually played it through it with a friend. So just every time he came over, we would, you know, just play through it for like hours and hours on end. It's one of the few RPGs that I have, you know, would say I've like 100%ed. Like I did everything you could do in that game. And what's bizarre to me is that it seems to have kind of flown under the radar a bit. And for how good that game is, And the fact that, like, I mean, it's such a big game that it actually comes on like 3 discs as well. And you can, like, over here at least, you can regularly find it in second-hand shops for like under £5. Like, it's such a cheap game now, and it just seems to always be in the bargain bin. And I don't understand how this game has kind of, like, gone so far under the radar. Like, given the, given who made it and all the backing it had and everything, they released it. It did okay, I think, and then nothing. There's just been no talk of like a sequel or anything.
It looks really good. I've been watching the footage.
Yeah, I may be going tomorrow to the gaming store because it's like GameStop is selling for $10.
It looks, it was $10. It looks amazing, man. It looks better than a lot of the Final Fantasies that have come out in the last 10 years. Honestly, like that looks amazing, man. It was on the 360. 2007, I think, came out.
2007, 2008. Well, and Miss One that made it is all former Square, and it was founded by Sakaguchi.
Yeah, that's a good one, Sorren. I had heard the name, awesome, but I had no clue what it was, and yeah, that looks great.
I I highly recommend it to anyone. I mean, especially given that now you can get it for so cheap, you've got nothing to lose. Like, even if you get it and you play it for a few hours and it's not your cup of tea, it's like $5. So
it looks sort of steampunky a little bit, maybe, like sort of. I mean, it is kind of. It's definitely the future fantasy, Final Fantasy type of vibe. Also, like it looks like sort of futuristic, but there's magic and there's some of the elements look kind of steampunk to me a little bit.
And it's backwards compatible on Xbox One.
All right, well there you go, man. Go pick it up and play it. That looks great. If I had time, I would, but I got too many other games to play. But yeah, it looks amazing. Okay. What was you said you had another one too? A second one?
Yeah. So okay, I've kind of got 2 other ones, but one of them I don't know if it will count. So I'll go with the one that I think will count. So this one, partly, so it is kind of a hidden gem. I mean, I think a lot of people probably did play it, but it's a game I kind of grew up playing and really loved, and it is a game called Theme Hospital. So a lot of people, obviously, they played like Theme Park and some of the other games in that series, and I believe that's the same company that, because that was Bullfrog back in the day that made it, and I think they then became Lionhead Studios that kind of did like all the Fable games and everything like that. But yeah, Theme Hospital, it's a game that like I don't tend to find a lot of people know about, but it's just a really good kind of simulation game where you've got to build and manage a hospital, and it's got a very kind of tongue-in-cheek slapstick humor to it. It doesn't kind of take itself too seriously, but at the same time it's got quite a lot of depth to it. But yeah, it's one that I really, really liked, and I don't think, in my experience anyway, like not a lot of people had heard about it. But the other part to it that people are maybe not aware of is that a lot of the guys who originally made that game, they released what is essentially the sequel to it last year, or either the beginning of this year or end of last year, which is a game called 2 Point Hospital, which is on Steam. I know it's on Steam, and that is Theme Hospital too. So if you played the original and really like it, I highly recommend looking at the new one. And if you didn't play it, then I would definitely recommend you go and check it out, especially if you like kind of sim games and
it was a hospital simulation management type thing.
Yeah.
Did you guys get this in North America?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Did you
We
get
also got it on PS1 too.
Okay. Did you get the game Theme Park as well?
I played a lot of
I played that on PS1 a lot.
I played a lot of Theme Park back in the day.
This will come as no surprise because we're brothers. I had a short list of 5. I could have picked any games in the world. Theme Hospital was on that list.
Really?
Theme Hospital was on the damn.
It's only $6 on GOG right now if you've never played it, because it's really fun.
That's amazing.
It is not serious either. It's great.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. I'll sneak in the other one that I had.
Go for it.
Like I said, I don't know if this will count.
We'll be the jury. We'll be the jury.
Yeah.
3 votes. 3 votes. Come on.
Okay, so basically, now I did actually mention these games to you recently, Justin, but I don't know if you remember me telling you about them. So where where these might not be considered kind of hidden gems or you know, great games that you have never played, they are hidden games on a couple of the Call of Duty games. So Call of Duty, I think it's Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 3 have within them these games that are completely different to Call of Duty, called Dead Ops Arcade. And like in the first one, in fact, in Black Ops 1, I don't think you would get Dead Ops Arcade by accident. Like, it's hidden in the main menu. Like, you have to kind of like, the main menu is kind of a little bit interactive in that you're a guy in like a chair in an interrogation room, but if you kind of there's something you can do and you can get rid of the menu, and then you can kind of stand up and walk around the room, and you have to like go over to this machine and input some codes and stuff, and then you unlock this game. But it isn't Call of Duty at all. It's actually if you've you heard of the game Super Smash TV?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It is exactly that. It's exactly that, but with it uses the Call of Duty Zombies theme to it. So, you know, it's got the kind of the weapons and the you know being chased by zombies and dogs and.
So this is an unlockable game within Black Ops with one of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think like later versions, it's automatically unlocked, but
yeah. So
originally you had to unlock it.
The first one is absolutely hidden in the menu. But when people kind of found it and then it became really popular, they did Dead Ops Arcade 2 in Black Ops 3, and I think it was just then on the menu to select. But yeah, they're as far as I'm concerned, they are games that are kind of hidden.
That's the definition of hidden gem right there.
Yeah,
They are fun.
Literally hidden.
I'm saying that's a dubious use of the English language. That's what that is. So.
That's great. That was a good pull, Sorren. Actually, that looks great. It's kind of an isometric overhead view shooter. You know, very similar to Xenocrisis, which is coming out pretty soon too, which is another game in that vein.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
My best friend's a high-level COD player, so I play a lot of these. I thought you were going to say Nazi Zombies at first, but those are fun too.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have gone with the zombies mode like that one. A lot of people have played that.
All right. Well, why don't you take it away, Justin? What's your?
Or do you have any left that he didn't take?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't have taken anything within Call of Duty. That's not my game, not my thing.
Not me neither.
So I took this to be a little less literal than hidden gems. So the greatest games you never played might also be an age-related thing, and I like to keep repping the 80s to make sure that they're getting their fair share of airtime. So I thought first couple of games. First game out of 2 that I want to talk about is one that is near and dear to my heart from the Commodore 64, which I think was a game that was well ahead of its time, and it was Bruce Lee. Now, I'm not sure if you played Bruce Lee back in the 80s. It was by a company called Datasoft. I don't know if it would have been the same company that pushed that into the US markets, if it even made it there. But what it was essentially a platform game with some small puzzle elements that used the Bruce Lee franchise. So what that basically meant is that you had someone that loosely had one colour sprite for his body, one colour sprite for his little trousers that he had on, and that was nice and easy for an 8-bit machine. You loosely had some kind of Chinese karate-based theme, and you had to walk from level to level using just about every Chinese and karate-based stereotype you could imagine, i.e. lanterns, dragons, and all of those things as well. And were the SID chip up to it, although it was a great chip, that was the sound chip inside the Commodore 64. I'm sure you'd have got all sorts of hi-ya type sound effects, but we didn't quite get those. But where this has really kind of come into its own in later years as well, I know this is not something that people would pick up now, is that inadvertently for me, it actually helped not necessarily singularly define the genre, but certainly was the leader in many aspects of games that you see today. Those loose puzzle elements, those platform elements, and actually something that is huge today, which is the speed run. So less concept of point scoring and more that you could get all the way through the game, particularly when you absolutely knew where you had to go and what you had to do. I think you could probably clear the game in about 15 minutes. But it was one of those things that, the more and more you played it, yeah, sure, you got there, but it was a really, really great game. It's a very nostalgic call for me. I know it's not something that someone would pick up nowadays and probably enjoy. You probably had to be there to enjoy it, but it was a great game in its own right, as well as being, say, a hark back to the 80s and really sort of, pushed the boundaries of that system at the time. It was a fantastic game.
It looks interesting. Like it looks like you can like jump back against the wall, like to avoid things, and yeah, it's almost like I wouldn't call it stealth, but maybe to a point, like an early stealth type.
Almost like an early Metroidvania type game, seems like.
Yeah, and with stealth elements almost,
It does actually. It has so some of the very primitive AI on the first sort of set of screens, you had like a little black sprite ninja who looked a little bit like the guy from N+. What's his name? I can't remember. Character from N+.
I don't even know if he has a name. I think they're just called Ninja.
Oh, well, he was stolen from Bruce Lee.
In the Ninja.
Ah, there you go. That's him. And there was like a big sort of fat green sumo-looking dude. And they were the kind of your only two guys, but they would kind of chase you around the level. So there wasn't, like you say, there was an element of not just like stealth, but like, cat and mouse. You had to kind of move it around. Look, lots of little things. And, simplicity is the key and always was the key in those games back then. But, for me, it was truly one of the best games of that era. So, yeah, not a hidden gem, but certainly something that I think if you were lucky enough to be around at the time to play, you got your hands on a great game. And if it's something that you can stomach, because I appreciate people that aren't used to playing games from the 80s, picking them up now, that's very tough because it feels a little bit retro for the best of things, but is well worth an investment of your time. But for my second game, I'm going to come forward 13 years to the year 1997. Woohoo! When the PlayStation 1 had started to really dominate its position in the market. The N64 had launched and had a good set of games, but maybe people were still kind of slightly burnt by the fact that it was very expensive or the cartridges were expensive. But another Konami, I don't know why I'm all Konami'd up today. This wasn't on purpose. I'm not a walking sponsorship.
So it was like Contra trailer, man. That just made you.
It was, yeah. It's like
So
the
how
best.
big was your check again?
Yeah, very, very. I swear it was just NLP. I didn't do this on purpose. Yeah, so this is again, obviously a game shared by me and Sorren, as 95% of them are. To this day, I don't know what would have inspired me or Sorren or to have picked this up, to have acquired this game. I have no idea why we would have taken this one off the shelf versus something that was bigger, a kind of a Crash Bandicoot or this sort of thing. But the game is, and I'm kind of hoping you haven't heard of it, is a game called Poi Poi. Excellent. Yeah,
maybe.
Well, wonderful. So that makes me feel slightly better. So yeah, 2 words, Poi, P-O-Y, P-O-Y. Now, what's the concept of the game? The concept of the game is essentially a fighting game where you are in sort of an isometric square, 4 characters, and there's different little blocks of scenery. They may be sort of logs or stones or rocks or things that you can pick up, and you've got a set amount of health, and the idea is that you basically have to throw these things at each other and deteriorate the other people's health, keep your own health, and the winner is the last one standing. You can also pick the other characters up and kind of toss them around like it's almost like wrestling. It starts to become a little bit more interesting because the characters have different abilities. Some are faster, some are stronger, and you can start to gain power gloves. And these power gloves allow you to do certain things. You might have a kind of a bit more of a synergy with your character. You might be able to pick something up and throw it all the way across the stage. Imagine a kind of a battle royal game, but that was just completely crazy. And
This
then
reminds me of Power Stone a little bit.
Oh, I love Power Stone so much.
Yeah, like the same concept.
Imagine a considerably weaker graphical Power Stone game. That would definitely be one way of describing it. That is a good example of a game that is very, very similar. And I'm a big Power Stone fan. This consumed an unholy amount of hours of mine and Sorren's time. It was one of those games as well that was compatible with the multi-tap. That's, back in the days when, of course, you only had 2 ports for controllers and you got stiffed for another bit of plastic to stick on the front of your console. And it was, I remember us having this little kind of set of games that were more than 2-player compatible with our multi-tap, games like Worms, games like Poi Poi, and this was absolutely right at the forefront. So this to me is one of those games that, with a great degree of certainty, I can say to most people, have you ever heard of Poi Poi? And they'll look at me blankly. And then if you said, have you heard of Power Stone? They would look less blank. So it's an absolutely special game. Like most games now, 22 years old, if you looked at it graphically, it looks absolutely disturbing. But
it does. But those PS1 era games, we've talked about this before, that the experimental early 3D time was always rough,
Absolutely, and I mean, visually, this is as experimental as it gets. So, but it was a fantastic game. It was followed up by the imaginatively titled Poi Poi 2. I don't think that was as successful, and I'm not even that sure if Poi Poi was a huge commercial success anyway. So that is where my love for the best games you've never played lies. And again, another one that you could have put in the dormant games section, but not entirely convinced that would lend itself to popular gaming nowadays. So.
Power Stone would be another good entry for that.
Yeah, Power Stone is a perfect example. Yeah,
Power Stone. That definitely would. It's just that kind of notch. Like you say, I kind of like the way you talk about it when you say like the experimental era. Power Stone was kind of beyond that era, so I think
a little bit.
It has enough to go with it that you could bring it forward and make it work.
Yeah, Power Stone was originally Dreamcast, right? I mean, it started off as a Dreamcast exclusive, but I think they ported it to PS2. And then there was 2 of them. There's Power Stone 1 and 2, yeah. And 2 was the one, I want to say that 1 was one.
I don't think 2 ever came out on Dreamcast in North America.
No?
And maybe in Europe, because I only played it on the PSP collection, which if you have a PSP, you need to have that.
Okay, all right, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Power Stone games are great. I played a lot of those in college on the Dreamcast, at least the first one. So, oh yeah, man, yeah, great game. Well, while I'm talking, I'll get on to mine, I guess. I picked a modern game and a retro game, because I figured why not. So the first one, I'll start with the retro one, which the best game you've probably never played is Dick Tracy on the Sega Genesis. Have any of you played that game?
I can honestly say I haven't. I'm well aware of it, but I've never played it.
Okay.
I've never played it.
You played it, Sorren?
No, I likewise to Justin. Like, I am aware of it, but I've never played it.
Okay, all right. And Derik,
Were you guys Mega Drive owners as kids? Or are you all SNES?
Well, obviously they were Mega Drive owners as kids. With the whole Toejam and Earl connection.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, Dick Tracy. I have to state, first of all, I have a lot of nostalgic attachment to it. My uncle, it was one of the first games my uncle got me on the Genesis. He might have even got it for me when he got me the Genesis. I think maybe, I want to say this game, Strider, and Altered Beast were my first games on the Genesis. And this one, I still play once in a while, and I don't ever play Strider. I don't ever play Altered Beast, but this one I think is held up better. I just love it because of the gameplay elements. Like, you got to pay attention to two planes at the same time. You got in front of you, so you can use your pistol to shoot in front of you, and then you can shoot across the stage with your machine gun. And the best part about it is this has a semi-destructible environment, so you can blow out windows, shoot up cars, blow out fire hydrants, stuff like that, which I thought was at the time in like 1990 when this came out, it kind of blew my mind. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I can shoot everything, my Uncle Doug, he thought it was hilarious. He's like, shoot up the windows. That's hilarious, So, yeah, if you look at the video there, maybe he'll shoot the windows out, but you can shoot.
Wait for it.
Yeah, but it's a really cool game. It's really difficult. I didn't even beat it till years later, but if there's one downfall of this game, it's there's these car chase levels that you're hanging on the side of a car like Dick Tracy did, shooting your machine gun across the top, and they just they get really long, get kind of monotonous. And then there's a couple levels where they take your weapons away and you got to just punch, which is just stupid. I don't know why they made that decision, but the majority of the game is really cool. I think it's a fun little action game that I think the concept could be updated into something really cool. But it's fun to
Rolling Thunder.
Yeah, sort of same time frame, very similar time frame. But I think what sets it apart from a lot of them is the way it. You're not just focusing on what's in front of you, but you're also focusing on what's across the street. Which is pretty cool, or on the other side of the stage. So it's worth checking out. It's a pretty cheap game to come by too. I don't think it costs much, and not sure if it's in any of the Sega Classic collections or anything. It might be. It was developed by Sega, I think, in-house. So very cool. Yeah, there was these cool little comic strip sections in between the stages too, and bonus rounds and stuff. Car chase level, my favorite. So yeah, that's my my retro example of your hidden gem. I mean, best game you've never played. Sorry, my modern. My modern example is a game I reviewed on my channel last year, and I think one of the reasons this game isn't more well-known is because of the name. It's called Pawarumi, which is a really strange name that's hard to spell, hard to say, and you look at it and you're like, how do you pronounce that? But the developer gave me a review code to review it, so I did a review video on it last year. It's around this time last year when it came out on PC. And it's a really cool modern shmup. But like a modern shmup in the way that it's not... They tried to go... The production values, they tried to up the production values a bit. It's fully in 3D. It's kind of on rails, but it also... since the environments are 3D, it I don't know, it adds a kind of another depth to it that it wouldn't have. It's the other thing that kind of sets it apart is the weapon system, which is Derik's got my video playing, and it's like I remember struggling through trying to explain the weapon system because it's kind of complicated, but it's based on colors. So that basically the color enemy you're shooting dictates what happens. So if you got a red weapon and you're shooting red enemies, it fills up your life, But as a result, everything moves faster, Or and then you can do combinations, like if you're using green, shooting red, it does something else, So that was kind of an interesting concept, the way that worked. It's a very, very cool game. I put some time into it last year, and I'd like to put some more time into it, but it's not a game that's super popular that I know of, even in the shmup community. I think the developers are still trying to push it. I know it's coming out on Switch very soon, which is what made me think of it. The dev got in contact with me recently, and he's like, hey, man, can I use your video to promote the game on Switch? And I'm like, sure, dude, go for it, So, yeah, Pawarumi, very cool shmup. It's actually a bit of a bullet hell, too. Later on in the game, especially on the harder difficulties, it gets really hairy with just, tons of bullets on the screen. And you guys know the difference between a bullet hell and a shmup, right? Or I guess they're both in the shmup, but a bullet hell is like a subgenre of the shoot 'em up genre, which is basically it's more about dodging bullets than it is shooting things in some ways, So
I think the difference that I know between bullet hell and shmup is the bullet hell I don't play and the shmup I will.
Absolutely in agreement as well.
Bullet hells are for the hardest core of the hardcore shmup players. there's a couple I've played. This is one of them. Although this is only really a bullet hell if you play it on hard. You play it on the hard difficulty, it's basically a bullet hell. But yeah, I agree. I'm not huge in the bullet hells. Mark, our other game fella who's not here tonight, is a definite bullet hell guy. He's a younger gen shmup player, so he likes those games. Kids these days, right? Yeah. So anyway, so those are my two games. Two games you maybe have never played. Definitely both worth checking out. I think Pawarumi is pretty cheap too. I don't know how much the Switch version is going to be, or if it's going to be available physically or not, but check it out if you can. So, Derik.
I'm like you, Z. I've got two, retro and modern. This one, thanks to Tony Brazel. We were part of a stream of NES games for charity a couple of years ago. It was 24 hours, and I was like, I need some games. He's like, we play a game called Kickmaster. Oh, I've never even heard of it. I mean, the name sounds made up.
The name is great, Kickmaster.
It sounds like something they made up for The Simpsons, but it's a dark fantasy beat 'em up where all you can do is kick. But it's so good, and it's like the Chuck Norris fantasy video game, but.
And it's on the NES, to clarify.
It's on the NES, and it's an expensive NES game now. But you build up magic powers. You get the chance to choose between, building your magic or your strength, because every enemy drops 3 different items. So you get the choice of which one you're going to try to grab. But there's different powers to get. I mean, it's just so good. And the graphics are great, because there's, I think, a later title during the NES lifespan. The music's great. And it's so much fun, but it is hard. And, like, I love when I tell someone about this, because they have the same reaction that Justin has, like, what is this?
Derik, do you know what this sounds like to me? You know, on those early episodes of The Simpsons around 1989, 1990, when Bart or Milhouse will talk about a video game that's completely ridiculous and it's made up, for the show like it's a real game in real life. That's what this sounds like.
It really does. I mean, like, I expect to be bundled with Lee Trevino's putting challenge or something.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. If you have an NES emulator, play it. It is so good. I'm sorry I can't recommend the actual cart, because it's at least $60 now loose. It's probably going up because NES stupid.
All retro prices are getting stupid, even sports games. And I mean, you go to a flea market now, it's like you can't even find sports games anymore, And even if you do, you're going to want $5-10 for a freaking sports game. It's like, seriously. Okay, cool. What's your other one, man?
We were talking about roguelike FPS games earlier, and there's a game on Steam called Unloved, which is
I've heard of that.
A Doom 2 mod. But it's completely procedurally generated, so each of the 4 levels you play, it randomly generates it. And it's got co-op and everything, but the idea is you're in like a hellish landscape. All the weapons you have to pick up. You pick up your armor, but every time you pick up a key for one of the unlocks to get a special item, the enemies respawn. If you open a door, the enemies respawn. So there's always that like element of, do I really want to do this? There's all kinds of unlockables, and it runs on the Unreal Engine. You can even set, like, once you get the right tokens, what you start off with. But I will go through a run of this, like, even on nights where I get off work when I've got like 3 hours before I go to bed. It's not uncommon to at least try one run of that. And they do the daily seeds like every other roguelike does nowadays. But I really can't recommend it enough. And it's not that expensive. I don't think it's $20.
And this is a mod of Doom 3, or it's done in the Doom 3
It was originally
engine?
a mod of Doom 2, but they ported to the Unreal Engine.
Oh, okay, all right, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. You've got to find extra stuff to unlock the seals of the doors. I've had some graphical problems with it on a couple before I upgraded my memory card or graphics card. Like, certain levels will make it chug, like just the one room, but then as soon as I go back out of the room, it'd run fine. Normally it runs like 60, 90 FPS per second, but it is so good, and with headphones on, it gets terrifying. And I wish more people would pick this up, because I'd love to see it like get a big release and a sequel. Cannot recommend it enough, especially if you like roguelikes or FPS horror games.
Yeah, I mean, from the video that you're showing, the this game looks like it should come with a free pair of spare pants.
Yeah.
And it's got clowns, and clowns are fucking evil.
It looks really. I thought it was a Doom 3 mod at first. Because in my head that game creeped me out because of how creepy it was, and this kind of reminded me of it, except a little bit crazier, But it looks very very creepy and very cool.
And one thing I love is at the end of this section, you have things called blood machines. You can fill with blood, but the thing is, it takes 7% of your health to do each of the 7 machines. So you've got that extra tension that you're almost at the end of beating that run. It's like, but if I do, I'm gonna lose my health. Can I survive to get back to the elevator lead? But yeah, I'll play just about any FPS roguelike, but this one I'll play at least once a week, if not more, and for hours if I get a chance.
I have a confession to make. Until tonight, I did not know that FPS roguelikes were a thing. And now you've referenced 2 of them. This is one, and then the one that Justin brought up earlier.
Well, see, I reviewed one on GR back in the day. Eldritch.
Did you? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I don't remember, but yeah.
He never reads my stuff, guys.
Dude, I had to edit your stuff. What are you talking about? So yeah, edit your 10,000, 5,000 word articles. But yeah, okay. So FPS roguelike is a thing. I feel.
Was that guy's login name Bukaki Bandit?
I don't know. Could have been. All right, cool. Well, I think that's about it, right, fellas? We've all covered what we wanted to cover. Any final things from anyone?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at that Unloved game, Derik, you're definitely going to enjoy Immortal Redneck.
All right, cool.
We're doing an actual video this week, so I'm just going to play random games you guys are making me buy.
I know, right? Luckily, I can resist. I have dozens of games in my Steam library that I have yet to even play. So.
Hasn't stopped me.
Plus some PS4 games sitting unopened over there, like the Shadow of the Colossus remake that I'd like to play. For starters. So, all right, fellas, that's it for episode 4. On behalf of Sorren Day, Justin Day, and Derik Moore, I'm Zack Smith, signing off. See you all next time. Later.
See ya.
I love to Power Glove.
I own a Power Glove. It's
It is
There's
a
no
piece of
point.
shit.
What's the point of being alive? You need to love to Power Glove, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
If you really had your skills increased by the Power Glove, either you're a freak of nature who doesn't need to breed, or you suck. A good episode would be like retro gaming rumors, like
Yeah, it would, man. My rumor, and I think I talked about this on Twitter one time, was back in middle school, we thought there was a Playboy game on the Neo Geo, and my friend.
Oh, was that what Strip Fighter was on?
I don't know.
Amazing. Is that a real game?
Strip
Yeah.
Fighter?
That's
a real game for real?
Is it?
No.
He's googling it. It must be.
It was on PC Engine.
PC
Fighter.
Strip Fighter?
It was a really bad clone of Street Fighter 2. It's called Strip Fighter 2. There's not a Street Fighter 1.
Is this all just all scantily clad women, basically?
Yeah, but I think that one with the cow stuff may be packing a beef stick.
Oh my God! Look at this. This is real. How do you know this?
I'm fucking autistic, I think.
I mean, look at this. This basically looks like Blanca from Street Fighter 2.
I want to say I originally saw this on like an Ashens video years ago, and I'm like, this can't be fucking real.
Earlier, I muted Zoom, and then I let out a massive fart, but Audacity.
Hell no, that stays in.
You muted Zoom, but it captured it on the Audacity file.
Yeah.
That could be in the outtake.
Keep it in.
We can do it in the outtake. That'd be pretty freaking.
Oh my god! Yeah, that has to be the outtake.
I thought I'd be really sneaky as well. I was like, I'll just mute that and then I was like, ah, shit, Audacity picked that up.
You look and it's like,
Yeah, it was like a really big way.
nice.